So this is the second of our webinar series, AI in Action. So the reason why we're doing AI in Action is because we feel there's quite a lot of noise out there about AI. A lot of it's enterprise level, a lot of scaremongering, and we wanted to kind of make it a bit more real, a bit more practical, and accessible for small businesses. So this, we're not going to be using like serious technical language in any of this, and we're going to sort of handhold you through and demo stuff using real world examples. So just a quick intro. So myself, I'm Phil DeGrishy. I'm the owner of Blue Llama. We were like a digital agency. We've been running for about 12 years. But in the last couple of years, we've moved away from web. We still do websites and web applications, but we moved away from that more into AI and automation, which leads me to introduce Anish, who's on the call as well, and we're doing the second half of the presentation, the majority of the presentation. He's our AI and automation lead. So just a little bit of housekeeping before we kick off. Do sort of mute your audio for the time being. And if you have a question, then you can just pop that into the chat. We will be sending you a recording of this webinar probably tomorrow. We'll drop an email to you with a recording, and of course also an AI summary as well. So let's jump into today's flow. So we are looking at a number of things I'm going to talk about. So myself and Anish are going to talk about. So first of all, I'm just going to introduce to you the concept of process automation. So give you a background understanding about how you can take AI out of that chat window that you're using it in, ChatGPT and Copilot, and then bring it into your company's processes. And we'll look at the stuff around that, including a few use cases that we're seeing in the wild. Then we'll also look at, Anish will walk you through identifying opportunities in your business and how you can assess those opportunities using this RIPE framework. This is going to be an interactive part of the presentation, so if you could think over the next 10 minutes about potential processes that you have in your organization which may have the potential to be automated, then you can bring those up with Anish later, and he might help you to walk through that process of determining whether they are indeed good candidates for automation. Then Anish will map out solutions, so take those processes apart into the components, and then determining which bits are good for automation, which bits are going to be good for using AI to improve that and make that process more efficient. And then Anish will do a demonstration of an automation we've done, which is about taking invoices from email and sort of categorizing that using the Microsoft Power Platform. A very simple automation, but gives you kind of a taste of what can be done. Then I'll talk for a couple of minutes, but on our opportunity workshop that we do, a product that we do that kind of will guide you through identifying opportunities for AI automation in your business. And then finally, there'll be about 10 minutes at the end for Q&As. So let's move on. So what is the problem that we think companies, small businesses are experiencing? And that is that your team is already using generative AI in some shape or form. So it could be, you could be using ChatGPT, Copilot, or other tools. But a lot of that is kind of haphazard. It's happening in the background. Not all of it is planned. And it's what we call shadow AI. So it's stuff's being done, but it's not really being managed. It's kind of individuals using it in different ways. So it could be someone using it to reply to a difficult email. It could be someone in marketing using it to write an article. It could be someone that's downloading a spreadsheet of customer information and then using AI to analyze that data. So this usage is inconsistent. Every team and every individual is using it differently. It's obviously a relatively new technology, generative AI, and there's a plethora of tools out there. And not everyone has the aptitude or desire to use them. And not everyone's proficient in using them as well. You could have casual users that are taking the output from the AI and using it at face value. They're not kind of critiquing it. And the wrong tools, improper prompts, so using them incorrectly, these tools result in unreliable and low quality outputs. So those people that are using them well, that's absolutely great, but are they in the business areas that need AI the most? So there's also no governance or security controls, right? So this haphazard usage that is happening, what information is being shared, you know, where is this going? Is customer data being sent to places it shouldn't be? We've heard in the news recently about data leaks, ChatGPT kind of using your data and then it being accessible to other people. So unless you turn off settings in ChatGPT, for example, then that data is being used to train the next generation of models, and we're kind of uncertain of what exactly that involves. So are there proper checks in place to guarantee quality, and is there ownership of that within your company? So what does this all mean? So it leads to inefficiency. There's obviously risk that we talked about, and there's also missed opportunities. So that's the problem. What is the solution? So we want to move away from this shadow AI, this AI being used in inconsistent ways, to more secure and consistent AI-powered processes. So integrating AI into the existing business processes. And how do we go about doing that? Well, okay, so we need to build automations where AI gives true value. Okay, so assess what processes are happening, which ones, how can we use AI to the best to get the highest return on investment and have the lowest risk. So we need to ensure consistent results across the teams through solutions that have been really well designed. They're repeatable, they've been tested, and we can also measure the results. We need to apply governance and security from the start, as I said before, and that means human accountability. That needs to take in data privacy concerns. We need to have auditing in place so that there's oversight. So all those safeguards can be built in from the start when we look at this properly. And we need to use trusted automation tools. So there's so many tools out there. Some are good for some tasks, some are not. There's also different large language models, different AI, and some are expensive, some are cheap, but some are good for different areas of business, right? So it's choosing the right tools. We're finding that Microsoft Power Platform is really good for a lot of our clients because they're already on Office 365, so it kind of integrates with their existing tool set. So the answer isn't to ban AI. Well, no, let's not do that. It's super powerful, but we want to bring it into the business properly, and that means embedding it in our workflows where security and governance can be applied, and we build repeatable, auditable processes with measurable impact. So that's the background, and where are we seeing, as Blue Llama, where are we seeing example opportunities, and what are our clients asking for, and what we're delivering? So one of them, and these are just examples that could be completely different in your organization, but one of them is inquiries and info inboxes. So these catch-all inboxes for customer support, and an email can come in. We can get AI to read the email straight away, to understand the context, understand the sentiment. Is a customer angry? Is a customer very happy? And that can be dealt with in a different manner. And then the AI can also potentially reply to an email if it's a very simple email, so like a password reset, we can send them the process to reset the password, or it could forward it to the right team. So it understands that this is a query for accounting and forward that to the accounting department. Or it could actually initiate another workflow. So if something comes in, it's an application form or something, and that can trigger another workflow to process that application form. Moving to that, so customer onboarding and applications. So you might collect information from your website for a customer. You're taking on a new customer. They need to provide you loads of information. The AI can check to make sure all that information is in place. It can go out to third-party compliance tools and do verification and validate uploads that the client has supplied. And then if there's bits of information that are missing, we can send an email or something to that client to request that information and continue that process until the application is complete. And then, of course, that application all that information can be uploaded somewhere, and then it can be managed by a human being. Extracting information from documents. So we've done a few of these kind of projects. One's around commercial leases, so these big 200-page lease documents, and we run a bit of AI just to extract the main bits that are required and then upload those to a different system. Another example, royal court documents. So there's like a massive PDF document up to 1,000 pages of all the different cases that have occurred in the royal court on a Friday here in Jersey, and we have an AI that extracts those into the different types of cases and then extracts information from each of those kind of cases. So if it's a property transaction, it'll find out who the seller is, who the buyer is, what the amount was, and it puts that into structured data and is automatically uploaded to a website, and people can then use that website to search for different information. Content creation, so you've probably seen a lot of this out there on social media. Some of it is done well, some of it's done really badly. But what you need to do is create a system that understands your company's brand, your tone of voice, your customer avatar and generates true content that really is delivering the right message for your business. Reporting KPIs, so more of an automation, this one, than AI really, but it's extracting information from all different sources. So it could be from QuickBooks, you're extracting financial information from HubSpot, your marketing information from Google Analytics, your website information, and compiling it all into a nice little dashboard so that management can understand the direction of the business and what's working well, what's working not. Finally, chatbots. So chatbots, a bit old school in terms of AI, but they're still super powerful. So it could be internal chatbots that are like trained on your company's policies and procedures, and then you could have like the chat window within Microsoft Teams where Tina in accounts can find out something about a leave entitlement. Or on the other hand, it could be an external chatbot based on your website where customers can go out and ask questions about your products and services. So the chatbot's been trained on all that information, and then someone can go and ask about pricing or functionality or anything related to the services you offer. So those are a few ideas, potential ideas that you could think of. But now I'm going to hand over to Anish, who's going to walk you through identifying potential opportunities in your business that can be that streamlining through AI and automation could be helpful. Anish.
Great. Yeah. Thank you everyone for joining today's webinar. And yeah, very excited to share with you our approach to selecting workflows that are ripe for automation and assisted AI workflows. So let me just share my screen and we can jump straight in. Great. So we have a kind of a 4-step process, quite high level in how we go about approaching this. So the first thing that we typically do with organizations is we not loading. So we first try to brainstorm and spot opportunities that we feel would be potential for assisted AI and automation workflows. Once we have a list, we then start to use our RIPE framework to understand and score which ones would be best fitted for automation. Then we take those particular high opportunity ones and then do a discovery design process to find the right solution and then embed it into the organization. Once we've embedded it into the organization, we then assess its value. We look at the short and long-term return on investment by having that particular automation in place. So when it comes to spotting opportunities, what I'd like to do today, and again, this is kind of a high-level walkthrough. We typically go a lot deeper when working with organizations, but it would be great if we could just take 5 minutes and brainstorm a potential list of workflows that you find that are quite time intensive and repetitive. And the reason I've underlined workflows is because we're not asking like, tasks that you might do with ChatGPT, which is, oh, could you, rewrite this email for me, or could you summarize this document? It's looking at the workflow end to end. So if there are some example workflows that you have, whereby maybe you do need to extract some information from a document, but then it needs to be sent to a certain individual, or an email needs to be read through and routed to a certain department. If there are certain workflows that you have that are time intensive or repetitive, if you could list them or have a moment or two to think about it and then list them in the chat channel here. So I'm just going to type in here so you know where it is. And yeah, just feel free to add them as soon as they come. Here are some basic ideas. Phil just mentioned a couple just earlier, but anything around document classification, document extraction, report generation, shared inbox tasks that you could see potential value in automating, and with AI, that would be great. So I'm just going to look at the clock and say, in the next 2 or 3 minutes, you can just add a few things there, and then we'll start to add them to our software. Great. So Marianne said onboarding and billing. Tracy has shared onboarding process as well. Lisa's just shared payroll and invoicing. So I'm just going to start adding these onto our software. So we have our own internal software where we take our actual framework and go through the process. So I'm just going to add a couple here. So we have onboarding process. I'm going to add payroll and invoicing. Complex travel itineraries. Preparing a new business proposal. Staff scheduling. Marketing. Great. We'll give it another minute or two just to add any others. If there's anything else that you feel, just to again trigger the mind, anything that is quite, a high volume, repetitive, time consuming process. If we can get even more specific on any processes that you have. So recently we were talking to an organization about a voucher scheme, which is very specific in the organization, but every day there is a voucher that comes into an inbox and it needs to be processed through a spreadsheet and then needs to be actioned by responding back to the relevant organization who have asked for the voucher. So that's a number of tasks across an entire workflow. So there is anything else that you have? Right, so Oliver said analysis of compliance documents received for risk factors and red flags. Great. Report writing, and then another one is completing periodic reviews. Great. Fantastic. Great. So I'm just going to press pause here. So we have a whole list already, and this is excellent. So once we have a number of potential processes or workflows that we can look into, obviously this is the very first step of spotting. The next step then would be to assess each of them and try to score them on a framework of which one would be ideal for an AI and automation workflow. So the way we think and go about doing this, if I just present my screen, is we take this kind of right framework, and the R stands for, as we already discussed, repetitive. And when we're thinking about repetitive, it's again, it will score higher on the framework if it's higher volume and more frequent. So for example, if you're getting invoices, let's say 50 to 100 a day, that would be a very strong candidate from a repetitive standpoint with high frequency and high volume. The next one is irritating or time consuming. And when I say irritating, we're thinking about things that from yourself or your staff or your colleagues, their time can be spent like there could be better place for their time to be spent. There could be more value they could give to the organization rather than doing this particular task that's taken them forever to do. So for example, someone going through a lease document and spending a good 1 hour extracting information, whilst they could actually be thinking more strategically around client relationships, that could be an irritation of a task that they have to do, but it takes a lot of time for them to do. The next one is P. So this gets overlooked quite often when people jump straight into automation. They want to just automate everything or use AI to support them in any workflow. But when something scores higher on the framework is when it's predictable. So when it's there's a rule-based flow that can be easily and consistently applied. So for example, if there is an invoice that has the same information on that invoice that can be extracted and then processed and added to a particular folder that's the same process all the time, that will score higher. But let's say, for example, there is something that requires a creative decision-making process, or it could go in 2 or 3 different ways. Or let's say it's a client sending an email that they have a question that an AI cannot respond, and it wouldn't be in a knowledge base for them to be able to respond. This would not be something that would score high, and therefore it wouldn't be something we would advise to have as an AI-assisted workflow. And then the final one is for E, is easy to plug in. So why this matters from an effort standpoint of implementing an AI automated workflow, there are going to be a need for different softwares to connect with each other, to speak to each other, and to take on particular tasks. So from calendar to a payroll system to an email system, that you can enable the AI and automation to speak and communicate with each other to achieve that particular workflow. Where something is harder to implement is when you have softwares that don't speak to each other very well. So, for example, you might have a CRM that is built, I don't know, 20 years ago, and you're still using it now, that has no API documentation, is not easily to integrate, and therefore will be very difficult for an API or an AI to connect with it and to achieve that task. Whilst if you're using all of your softwares and workflow within the Microsoft stack, as an example, it'll be significantly easier to plug in as a workflow. So this is why we use this framework to assess which workflow would be right for AI automation. So if we now jump back into the AI Opportunity Finder software, and we go to the next stage, which is scoring with the right framework, we can see all of the tasks that are listed here. So I will just, if anybody's open who's shared their particular workflows, would like to just maybe unmute themselves or just drop a note in the message or put the hand up. I don't know if you can raise your hand up on Google Meets. And I'd be happy to walk them through how we would assess it, if there is anybody. Nope.
Yeah, my name's Mike Stein. How you doing?
Hi, Mike. How you doing? Thank you for jumping on.
Yeah, I put down report writing. My business is a planning consultancy, and a lot of the reports are very similar in terms of how you respond to policies, but obviously the sites are different. So quite often you would use one report for another site, and then obviously you would make the changes to that report because it relates to a different site, but the policies would be very much the same, and you could pretty much write the same.
Fantastic.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes absolute sense. So there is predictability in terms of how the report is being written. The difference is in the sites, and so if you could walk me maybe through that very high level process on your steps that you take when it comes to when you have to start writing the report to when it's complete.
Right. So yeah, I mean, you've got a load of planning policies in the Bridging Island plan, and you need to know which ones are relevant, whether it's to a residential development or to a commercial development. And once you know what those policies are, then you can apply them, and it should, I think, be relatively simple to use AI to do that sort of work for you.
Gotcha. And let's say we take the framework. How often do you do the report writing? Is it once a month, once a week? Is it a number per week?
Well, within our offices, there's probably 3 people writing reports, so you could be saying 4 or 5 reports a week.
Okay, so we would say this is definitely quite a repetitive workflow.
Yeah.
And in terms of time, how long does it take to do one single report?
Probably a couple of days
for one single report.
Yeah.
So definitely time. And then if we look at the predictability of it, you mentioned that the only thing that is changing is obviously the site, but the policy and the rules of it is pretty much the same. So it can be a simple rule-based flow with the AI's intelligence of picking up which site it's looking at in order to write the document in the right way. Is that correct?
Yeah,
so,
I would say so, yeah.
So would it be kind of, or yes, so maybe a straightforward automation would be 100% yes rule-based, but with an AI assisted, could it deviate sometimes? Or
yeah, I mean, there are nuances obviously in policy. So you as obviously overlooking the report once it's written, you would need to pick up to see if there are any sort of things that aren't quite correct.
So maybe an approval or review process would need to happen before it can be
Yes.
submitted. Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So I would probably put there kind of for now. And then another important step would be the tools that you're using to do this. From the sound of it, it sounds relatively straightforward. But again, if I ask the question, which is, what are you and your team doing on the tool basis? Like, what are you using? Microsoft Word? Is there maybe another software that you're using to write the report? What softwares do you use?
It is Microsoft Word, yeah, Microsoft Word.
Yeah. So are there any other softwares that are being used as part of the flow?
Not really, no, I wouldn't say so.
And are you sending this by email to somebody?
Yeah, we would send it to our clients by email, and in terms of sending it to the planning department, we would upload it onto their portal.
Okay, and that if it was their portal, that would probably be something that you would look to integrate with an automation with, or would you prefer to keep it in-house, approve, and manually upload it to the portal?
Well, if that can be done by AI, again, that's quite a time-consuming process, so that would be quite a useful thing.
Okay, great. So here's where we start to uncover where it's easy to plug in. So if we stayed in the Microsoft stack with Word and Outlook and sending it to the clients, that would be a yes for easy to plug in. But if we looked at the portal without understanding fully what the portal does and what connections it has and what API integration it has, it would be it would be maybe in the kind of area of easy to plug in for us to see what kind of implementation would happen. But then a bit more discovery would need to go in there. But I will keep it there for now. Thank you, Michael. Thank you very much. I'm just going to press pause there, but I just give you an example of how, we would go much deeper. But just for this particular webinar, I'm just giving an example or a taste of kinds of questions we would ask before we understand how ripe something is for AI and automation. I'm going to take another one here, which is part of the demo that I'm going to provide. I'm going to go down to invoice classification and explain to you why we took this one on. When it comes to if it's repetitive, the answer is yes. From the perspective of the organization, they have about 10 to 20 invoices coming in per day. Time consuming. So when we were looking at the invoice process, it wasn't just an invoice that is coming in from the perspective of internal organization. They're an estate agency, so they're getting supplies for different clients sending invoices. So the time was being spent on understanding which invoice was for which client. So it was very time consuming to do that process, especially with the volume as well. So if it was one invoice every week for one client, it wouldn't be that time consuming. But because it's almost 200 invoices per week, the time consumption dramatically increases. Was it predictable? So we went through the process and we could see how predictable that flow was, and then easy to plug in. So the only two softwares that we're using was SharePoint and Outlook. So the answer is yes, very easy to plug in. So if we say add this to the roadmap, and we have also report writing, we can add it to the roadmap. Just click Save Changes. We can see these two are now placed at the top as prioritization, so they score higher than the others. And then we will place it onto our roadmap here, and we will go through our process. So I'm just going to jump now back into how we thought about the invoice classification as just an explanation of how we do the solution process. So I'm just going to jump in here. As I mentioned, in terms of invoice classification, 1 to 2 minutes per invoice, 250 invoices per week, 4 to 8 hours being spent on it per week. So when we sat down with the particular person who was responsible for the invoice classification, they explained the flow step by step. So this is really important when it comes to building a really effective AI automated solution, is to really understand from the beginning to the end what the workflow is. So here we understood the person would go to Outlook. Again, it sounds obvious and it sounds like, yeah, of course, but from the automation standpoint, it's very important to know this. So we start with going to Outlook. They then check the email. Again, the AI and automation needs to be able to check the email, which is an important step. And then the first question that the person is asking, is this email an invoice? So that's the first bit. The second bit then is, if it's not, then what do you do with it? So they go ahead and process the email in a different way, not through the invoice processing flow. If it is an invoice, then they have to review the invoice. So they download the attachment. And the number one thing that they have to do is check, does this invoice have one of their clients' name on it? And if it does have one of their clients' name on it, does it have a particular property, so that we know which property that this invoice is associated with and which client we need to send the invoice to. Once they've done that, they go to their SharePoint, they find the right folder for that particular property and client, and then they add it to the correct folder. And then finally, the workflow ends with them moving that particular email into the action folder. So that is an end-to-end workflow. So a series of tasks that happen in order to build the entire workflow. So the question to myself and to the organization was, okay, how does AI come into this? So the number one thing to think about is, where is the thinking happening in the workflow? So the thinking happens here. So is it an invoice? Here, which client and which property does the invoice belong to? And here, which folder do I need to add it to? So here's where we start to integrate the AI into the workflow to really save that time for the staff member. So here, as you can see, then we highlight and say, okay, this is where the AI models need to take place. Checking these three areas. Can we do this? Can we actually have the AI understand what an invoice is? Can we help ensure that the AI knows which customer and property it belongs to? And can we ensure that the AI knows which folder to place it into? And then once we understood that, we then say, okay, the rest of the stuff is where the automation can take place. So that's where we step back and say, okay, that's how we see the AI and automation working. Then we ask ourselves, okay, what stack is the organization using? So it's the Microsoft stack. And then we start to think about, okay, firstly, what automation tool do we need to use? What AI tool do we need to use? And what connectors do we need to use? So these are the three components that really make the automation come together. So when it comes to this particular workflow for the automation, we used, Power Automate. For the AI, we used Azure AI Foundry and OpenAI. And for the connectors, as we understood through their current use case, they were only using SharePoint and Outlook. So from our standpoint, this was a perfect, simple automation for us to embed into their organization that could save them close to 8 to 10 hours a week. So this is how we design the solution. So the trigger would be in a Outlook connector that reads the email as soon as an email comes in. Then the AI would check if it's an invoice. So it will read the document to see, okay, we built a model that understands, is this document an actual invoice? If it's not an invoice, it will then leave the email in the box. So it could be a report, it could be a contract. It will know that this is not an invoice, so we're not going to process this. So the AI will know that. So if it is an invoice, then it reads the invoice to see, does it have the list of clients in this email? So the AI will have the list of clients, and it will check that invoice if any of those clients exist in that invoice. And if the answer is yes, it will then move it to the next stage, which is, is it a client invoice? If it's no, it will leave it in the inbox. If it is a client's invoice belonging to that particular list, it will then take it to SharePoint and add it into the correct folder. And then the automation will go back to the email and then move that particular email into the action folder. So this is an example of an end-to-end AI-assisted workflow that does the start to the end job for the particular colleague, saving them a significant amount of time. So I'm now going to show you a demo of how this works. So if I just move this to the side, this is a demo invoice, so not an actual an invoice, but here is the customer's client's name. As you can see, there are a number of different companies here, but the main company that the AI needs to know is Horizon Estate Limited, and Marina Tower would be the property name. So that's an example of an invoice. If I now go to the invoice classification SharePoint list, so here are all the clients. Again, this is all completely demo and dummy data, but let's say the SharePoint list has all the clients' names. So the AI has access to this list. So it can say, oh, these are the client's name, these are the connected properties. Great. And then when the invoice is processed, it needs to put them in the correct place. So here, invoices to be approved. And let's say here are the list of the properties. So that particular invoice, we should expect it to go in here. Marina Tower is the property name for that particular client. So if we go here, and then I've got this invoice, so invoice 11321, please process this invoice. So this email is coming from a separate account that will go into the shared account here. So we would expect it to go into this inbox, and then it will automatically be put into the action folder, and the file will be extracted and placed into the SharePoint folder. So let me show you this. So if I click send, so the invoice is there. And we'll just give it a couple of seconds for it to get into this inbox. As it's going to take a couple of minutes to do the entire flow, do you have any questions as that's coming in? I'll just check the chat.
Anish, I just think you're super brave for doing a live demonstration. Anything could go wrong. Ah, here it is.
Perfect. So the invoice, the email has come through. And then the automation is, as it's already turned on, maybe it will be triggered in just a couple of seconds. And what we expect to happen is the email here would go into the action folder, and the document will end up appearing here. So I'm just going to double check the automation that it has been triggered. Yep, perfect. So exactly as expected, from the email standpoint, we can see it's actioned, and you can see processed IC. Processed IC stands for process invoice classification. And then if we go into the folder, we can see Marina Tower, and it's picked it up there. So if I go to documents, I go to invoice to be approved, I go to Jersey, and I go to Marina Tower, it knows that it's put it into the correct place. And what we've also built to help the organization is a performance log, so we can check, so we can see exactly where it's gone through. And anybody who needs a new invoice to invoices to review, it will also be added here, so team members can go in and see that it's been reviewed. So yep, completed, for example, and they've reviewed it. So this is an example of an end-to-end AI-assisted workflow that the AI reads the invoice, checks the client name, and then puts it into the relevant folders, taking the entire workflow from that particular staff member. So when we do these automation workflows and look at how to integrate it in businesses, the last part of the process is to assess its value. And the way that we look at assessing value is really how much time is being saved as a result of having these automations in the business. So if I go here to AI ROI, so this is a tool that we built to help organizations understand the value of tools that are automations that are being built within the organization. So here we have the invoice, so this task title, so we can have this as anything. So we can put this as, report writing as an example. And we can explain how many times you do it and how the frequency. But let's just take the invoice one as the one that I'm just doing. So invoice classification. And then, as we mentioned, the number is 250. And it's per week. And the time per invoice classification, we can say, let's say 90 seconds. And then let's just keep that. So the cost of the employee doing the work takes this much time. And so on a weekly basis, it's about 6 hours a week. And from a cost perspective, we can calculate the cost from that perspective here. Then with the AI automation, so now that we've been doing it for a while, we've got an average of 9 seconds per invoice. Software license is we're using Power Automate. So let's just put PA, and that costs believe about £12 a month. And then the AI token, it's less, but let's just say £5 a month. So then we have our analysis. So we have before AI automation and with AI automation. So annual cost is 200 compared to the current cost, maybe around about 8,000. And we can see that the time saved, cost impact in a chart. So, what we do here, we can just download this as a PDF for each automation to understand the value that it's bringing to the organization. So we can see that report here. And then if that needs to be shared widely with colleagues, that can be as well. So you can see how that looks. Great. So I'm just checking on time. I'm just going to press pause now. So that is the demo. This is how we assess its impact. And I would be happy to take any questions as well.
Shall we move on and then deal with questions at the end, Anish?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
A good shout. Okay, let me share my screen. Just with that whole project that we did there, like with a lot of the projects we do, the customer sees the value of that, and there's a lot of cost saving going on. And now they're looking at phase 2 of that, where we're actually taking those invoices and then going to upload them into their accounting system, aren't we? That's the next stage that we're looking at. Okay, but yeah, let me just share my screen. 1 second. Cool. So just before we go into the questions, I just want to say, so we have this thing. So obviously you can assess the different processes within your organization yourself and determine which ones are the best for automation. But we offer what we call the AI Opportunity Workshop. And what this includes is interviews with your senior management team to identify potential processes, and then we'll dig deeper and actually work with the process owners, the champions of those processes, and map those processes out completely as they are now, and also then identify where automation and AI can add value. We can kind of prioritize those processes, see what values is gained from each of them, and then we can report that back to you and do a presentation of what we've uncovered. Typically that can be delivered in about 30 days as well, so it's a super quick thing, as long as we can line up all those interviews within that time frame, and then your business has got a good foundation for going, okay, yeah, this is where we can get started with AI automation. And the great news is that normal price is 2,450, but for attendees of this webinar, we're happy to do that, as it's a fairly new product that we're offering here. We're happy to see that a 50% reduction. Not only that, so that's the opportunity assessment, and that work is kind of the groundwork that you would need to do any automation processes. So that would need to be paid up front. But if there was any work that dropped out of that you wanted to carry forward with process automation, then the Jersey Business Productivity Grant has just strangely reopened again. So it was oversubscribed. It kind of was open for a few months and then it's oversubscribed. They shut it down, but it's recently just opened up again. So for Jersey businesses, which I know kind of most of the people on this webinar are, then you can get 50% match funding on productivity projects, which obviously this fits neatly into, and a grant of up to £75,000. So there's still, for the last few months of the year, there's still £750,000 that needs to be mopped up, and then next year there's, I think it's 2.3 or maybe 2.6 million as well. So a really good opportunity to start your automation journey and look at your processes and get funding on that. And we have worked with a number of clients this year to do that. But yeah, the grant's back open again, so it'd be great to take up that opportunity. Okay, so I think now is a good time to ask any questions. If you do have any questions that you don't really want to talk about on this call, then happy for you to drop me an email. That's my email address there, phil@bluellama.co.uk. But yeah, if there's any questions, then yeah, let's if you can drop them in the chat, or happy to
Yeah, there are a couple of questions.
Go for it,
Phil, so I'm not going all the way to the top because I think, Phil, you might have responded to a few, but I feel Tracy and Danielle has shared a couple of questions. So Tracy said, can it possibly work with handwritten information? I know a bit old-fashioned, but say filling in application forms, sometimes this is just manually populated. So the answer is yes. So with Azure AI Foundry, one of the most I feel, one, with Microsoft anyway, they're investing billions into the kind of AI process and developing their tools significantly. But they've always been doing AI for the last couple of decades. With Azure AI Foundry, it brings all of their AI services under one umbrella, and one of them is being able to understand handwritten documentation. So one of the newest models is Azure AI Content Understanding. It's a multi-model service that basically uses the generative AI that we use in ChatGPT, but also their document processing tool that they've had for decades. And you kind of got a bit of a powerhouse going on together. And then when you upload documents, it can basically understand that information at an amazing speed without you having to do any kind of machine learning, which is giving it loads of documents for it to learn the handwritten documentation. So it's really powerful. We use it for the lease extraction process, which can also have handwritten information. So even like signatures, it picks up and stuff like that. So yes, handwritten information can be done. Now, with the caveat is, if it's handwriting like mine, it can be very, very, very bad. So I don't think they can pick it up if the human can't pick it up as well. So depending on how good or bad the handwriting is, I think that will have an impact on this AI's ability to extract the right information. So hopefully that answers your question there, Tracy. Fantastic. Danielle, you asked how much technical knowledge of Azure Foundry is required in order to connect to Outlook and SharePoint. It's a good question, but I think the way I would answer it is, firstly, your foundation is Power Automate, or your no-code automation tool. That's really where the connectors are happening. Azure AI Foundry, with its different services, connects into Power Automate, which Power Automate also connects into the SharePoint and the Outlook and all the other tools. When it comes to knowledge of Azure AI Foundry, when we started with it, it felt like a quite intimidating new universe of different models, different services. But once you dive in, take a couple of free online courses from Microsoft, everything becomes relatively straightforward. It's very user friendly, and once you understand certain things that you're trying to do and certain models that you're trying to play with, and you've done one, it becomes really easy to just continuously use it. So I think the learning curve initially can feel a little bit steep, but once you're in there, it becomes easy. When it comes to integrating it with Power Automate, I definitely would say a bit of technical knowledge is required to be able to integrate Power Automate with Azure AI and with your Outlook and your SharePoint. The other question is, would you use Azure to then connect to external APIs to pass the transport information? Yes, absolutely. So you can, that's kind of where it comes to Power Automate, but also you can use it in any way. So Azure provides APIs for any of the models you build in Azure AI, which you can then use in any application that you wish to integrate it into. So that's, the other question you had was, is your cost comparison report generated from a Microsoft application? The answer is no. It's an in-house built software that we have to help us evaluate the automations that we build to understand its value to the companies that we're working with. I'm sure if anybody is interested in using it, just to have an idea of the value of an automation before jumping into it, and we can give kind of a an idea of how long or how quick an automation can work in comparison to how the manual work is doing, we're more than happy to provide that if you wish to use it. Is that AI Craig or L Craig? I read your comment and I agree. I think it's a measure to begin with regarding manual time and cost. But yeah, understanding where that time is reallocated is a question that it's not completely up to us to answer. We just look at the time and cost it's taking for a particular manual workflow. Great. Any other questions? Feel free to unmute yourself. More than happy to take any questions anyone has.
Rosie's also put there a link to the productivity grant, which I think probably everyone in Jersey is aware of it, but yeah, it's just a useful thing to say. Most businesses are, I think you have to have 2 employees or something like that, or one, you know, the business owner and then another employee. That's the kind of big thing. And then if you've been running for over 6 months, you can get access to the full grant. If you're under 6 months, then I think the maximum is £10,000. I may be wrong, but yeah, check that link. Oh yeah, and Ivana from Blue Llama here, she's just put a link there to our next event, which is yeah, how you can easily create AI assistants. So instead of just using Copilot out of the box or ChatGPT out of the box, it's how to customize one that can be super useful for your team. So you might have dropped in loads of documentation. So similar to what I talked about before, like could be around your policies and procedures. So you chuck in all your policies and procedures so the AI can understand all of that, and then you can release something to your team through Teams. They can go in there and they can ask questions about your policies and procedures. So that's our next webinar, where we'll be talking about these kind of customized versions of GPTs and Copilots. I think that's in about a month's time. Any other questions? No? Should we wrap it up, Anish? Anything else you want to add? Yeah?
No, nothing on my side. Thank you, everybody. We really appreciate everyone taking the time. Hopefully it was useful, and maybe gives you some food for thought on how you think about doing AI and automation inside your business.
Perfect. Yeah, and we'll be
Thank you,
dropping a summary of this into your inbox tomorrow. And yeah, if you've got any questions, then give us a shout. Thanks, Tracy. Thanks, Ivana. Cheers, guys. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.